Jeff Isaak on the board here. I'm happy to have him in studio. He's always game to talk about a bunch of different things, except for maybe not one sport, which he just told me I won't reveal what that sport is, but some of the audience may kind of mirror that opinion. But we'll be spread out evenly. We got 3 interviews. We do have one for the Red Wings with Michael Devellano at 7:15. He'll kind of do the moratorium for the postmortem for the season here, and then we'll move on. We'll move on to the Griffins. Actually, we're still going to keep that hockey spot because the Griffins are headed into the playoffs. They're a sponsor of the station, so we're going to be talking to some of our local folks that cover them. So we'll be doing more hockey segments, but this will probably be the last one on the Red Wings for a while. But then we get the Pistons because I don't think enough people are talking about them, and they're heading into the playoffs. They're looking good. Everybody's healthy. It seems like they're gelling at the right time. There's a lot of things going right. And then we got the Tigers. I listened to a podcast today that was also kind of down on them, but that was
really?
Well, that was because it was I think recorded last Wednesday.
Oh, that's not very good then.
Yes, and then it got better after that. So we'll talk with Alex Urban about that because it was actually his podcast that I was listening to, the Eat 'Em Up podcast. But we got to pick the thing of the day here, Jeff, because there's two viable options. It depends on what route you want to go. Depends if you want to talk about board games because it's National Scrabble Day.
Okay.
Or if you want to talk food, which is the typical trope of the thing of the day, and it's Peach Cobbler Day.
Oh, yeah.
So we could go like favorite cobbler, favorite pie, something in that, say favorite, that type of dessert. I don't know what dessert. I guess cobbler is its own category.
It is
Favorite cobbler would probably be and then if somebody says like, well, my uncle was a cobbler, I'm really gonna go crazy. I'm really gonna like it. If they were like, oh, my uncle Tony was a cobbler, and that's my favorite cobbler, I like a good homonym. So that's that will be on the table if we go cobbler. Otherwise, we can obviously go board game if we do Scrabble. Thoughts on favorite thing of the day here?
My favorite board game is Aggravation. And the only reason it is because when my brother and I would go over to our grandparents and spend the summer with them, we always played Uno, Skip-Bo, or Aggravation.
Classics.
Yeah.
I don't remember.
So I love the classics. Yeah.
I don't remember Aggravation. I remember the name, but I don't remember what. I mean, obviously, I can guess by the name of the game what happens in it, but I don't remember what the goal of that game is.
The goal was you had 4 marbles. You had to bring them home. You had to get them around the board, and you knocked other people out, which is the reason you aggravate.
Gotcha.
So, yeah, my kids were introduced to it during the pandemic. We had nothing to do, so I ordered Aggravation off of Amazon, and we loved it. We played Aggravation until they went back to school.
that was one of the. There weren't a ton of benefits to that period, but some people connected more with their hobbies and different things at that time, and board games really took off. I also was looking at, I follow memorabilia and different things. I was looking at I kid you not, a marble auction today, and I was looking at the results, and these marbles were going for over $10,000.
Marbles are, I don't know what it is, but I'm a big estate sale guy, always go to estate sales, and marbles, they go like crazy. It's very interesting. There's clearly valuable marbles out there. I played with marbles as a kid. I would have kept them if I would have known they were worth money now, but it's insane. Marbles, the stuff that is worth money nowadays, it just boggles my mind. There's another board game, Boggle.
There you go. That's a good one. That's another classic. Yeah, so if you find some marbles in your basement, contact Encore Business Group, I guess, because we deal with a lot of consignments and different things, and
absolutely,
I have connections to that auction house that was auctioning those off. I knew they were valuable, but I was surprised to see. I'm sure they handpicked some of the most valuable ones to show the results, but I mean, legitimate 5 digits. There was one for over 10,000. There was one for over 20,000.
That's insane.
And yeah, you look at this marble and you think, yeah, it looks like a marble. it looks like a regular marble, but obviously you'd have to be able to pick it out and take it to a place like that. But yeah, interesting stuff. My favorite board game, because I have a feeling we might pick the Cobbler. But so before we move on to that, is Tornado Rex. Have you ever heard of that board game? It's kind of a combo niche board game that I think my mom discovered and got it for us. She's here in studio and nodding to me. It just showed up at the house one time, and I was like, I don't know what this game is. But basically, you're trying to get up the board to the top of the mountain, and then if you get the Tornado Rex card, you hit the button at the top, and that releases Tornado Rex, which is essentially a top, and then it goes down the board and knocks everybody off.
Oh, that sounds fun.
It's a fun game. It sounds kind of like Aggravation, except the threat is external. It's right. Tornado Rex is the impending threat at the top of the mountain.
I might have to check that out.
That's a good one. Also something that is of value, because I've looked at the listings on eBay, and I think that game's going for over $100.
Okay,
so another
it's
thing,
a rare board game.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So, but yeah. So there's that. So do we want to go with the board game, or do we want to go with favorite cobbler?
Well, we can do both, can't we?
We could. We could see what people bite on.
And peach cobbler was my, of course, the peach cobbler was my favorite.
That's your favorite?
That is.
My stepmom used to make a great apple cobbler.
Oh yeah. See,
I like that.
I don't turn many cobblers down, but peach is, yeah.
There's also an Adam Sandler movie called The Cobbler. That's also an option. I'm trying to think of how many cobbler options we have. So that's the third in the homonym. You can pick the movie.
When they mention the Adam Sandler movie,
no,
you don't hear the cobbler.
Because you'd have to go probably 30 down to get to that. I
did see that movie.
Did you? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I've seen a lot of his catalog, maybe more than I should admit on air, but I am kind of that age. I saw Billy Madison when I was at a young age, and I remember thinking, I think I'm too old for this. My dad hated it, but yeah, there was, I guess maybe I'd like it more now. I'm not sure. Maybe I'd get more of the humor, but yeah, so maybe we'll go with both. We'll see. Yeah. We'll have Michael Devellano first. And we'll see. This might cheer him up. We got to cheer him up a little bit, because he covers a lot of hockey, though. He doesn't only cover the Red Wings. He's a scout by nature. I think Red Wings are his primary team. So he has other hockey to watch. He's not like the rest of us that are just going, what hockey? No, Let's just turn our attention to basketball. But it is funny. You and I talk about this, Jeff, a decent amount when we're in here together, that it's like people gravitate to whatever the thing is that is the worst in the market, and then they just talk about that. Like Red Wings, okay, they I mean, truth is they barely missed the playoffs. They were close. Their point total was solid this year, very competitive. Nobody's going to want to hear these excuses. I get it. They want them to be in, and so did I, and that's fine. But it's funny that's the worst one right now. Yeah. I mean, unless you want to include the early Tiger season, which is way too early to worry about that. They're still in the hunt in the division.
I didn't hear much Tiger talk this morning. I'm like, how can you not? After a great weekend they had, that's the positive. Talk about the Tigers. Talk about this kid, McGonagall, he's doing. Yeah. It's fantastic. It's so much. Then even though they've been struggling a little bit, there's still so much fun to watch. And yeah, the Red Wings, they just choked. It's 4 years in a row. But these people act like they're going to blow up the LCA arena and that they're going to take their team away forever. Some of them actually want to take their team away forever right now. But I'm like, man, I used to be that so emotional involved in the Lions. And I'm like, it's just not worth the stress. And now that I'm older, I can't have the stress, because then the gray hairs show up. And so you just I'm just like, maybe next year.
Well, that's how I am too. And I'm sure there are people, it's a good discussion for the show, because I'm sure there are people that say, oh, well, you guys are too positive. You guys, it's not that we're just trying to be positive. We're trying to educate on what is happening, explain what went wrong, explain what went right, all of those kinds of things. But also, I do think that when you hammer on the negative, that becomes pervasive in your life in general. It then makes you focus on the negative in your life, and you say, and then you view your own life that way. Oh, a bunch of things are going right in my life. My life is like the Detroit sports scene, but I'm going to focus on the worst possible thing. Right. I'm going to focus on my version of the Red Wings right now, instead of focusing on my version of the Pistons or whatever that may be in your life. So that's part of the reason, the positive mindset, all of that, because really the Detroit sports scene is going very well right now. I mean, it's been a joy to cover for this time frame that I've had the show, and now we have the second show. And I had this to tell you. I didn't tell you this before the show here, Jeff, but I've been doing a mock draft with the guys at Michigan Football Network. We're literally going through the entire 7 round. Each of us have 10 or 11 teams. Okay. And we're mock drafting the entire draft.
All right.
We're in the 5th round right now, and then we will be reporting it on their show here. But and we'll have Jace on the show, I think, on Thursday, to talk about that a little bit too. But yeah, we're going through all 7 rounds of the mock draft, so you can distract yourself with sports here too.
I'm to the point right now, because all this mock draft stuff, like, let's get to the draft and get it over with. Like, I heard this morning, all right, up next, Lions NFL draft talk, and I'm like, we're just guessing. We're just guessing. Oh, yeah. I guess it's so much fun to guess.
Yeah.
But I'm like, okay, 6 weeks of this. I'm like, let's just get to the draft.
Well, don't listen to Shane Graham's Extra Points on Thursday, because it'll be
I want to hear your picks.
Draft heavy show. No, it'll be a good show. We've got a good variety, because we've got Mark Levin, who was I'm excited about him because he was an NFL PA expert. Basically, he was an agent expert on salary cap, and that I'm having him on to explain that side of things. He worked the player side of things, so that'll be a unique perspective. And then we'll have a national draft pundit to tell us what his thoughts are on the Lions, and then probably Jace to talk about the Lions draft strategy here. But yeah, then we'll have the actual draft. So then we're only 1 week and change, 1 week and a half out here from that being over, and then we talk about the picks for then that next 2 months or whatever till we have the next thing to talk about. So then you'll be tired of that by the end of that 2 months.
Well, here's the thing: is when the Lions were terrible, we had the first, second, third, always a top 10 pick, and they would argue over who we're going to take or who we're going to take and how we're going to blow it. Right now that we're good, that's still what they talk about. How are they going to screw this up? I'm like, come on, you guys, we're winning. Next up, we're going to do great. It's going to be a great draft. I'm looking forward to this draft.
It does seem like a good marriage between need and what should be on the board at that time. Yep. I know they try to go best available according to their board, but there's going to be a lot of tackles high on their board, and tackles are going to be available.
Yeah, and the best part is the needs that we need. There's a plethora of players this round.
Yes,
loaded, full of them. So I'm like, okay. It's not going to be hard to miss in this draft. He can't miss in this draft.
It's a good year to not need a quarterback, which they don't need. There's certain positions that I'm not as high on in this current draft, but defensive end, tackle, the offensive line as a whole, those are all strengths in this draft. So that bodes well for the Lions. But up next, we're going to talk about the Red Wings. Don't leave. It'll be a constructive conversation. We'll also talk about Cobbler / Scrabble to try to keep you around as well. But Michael Devellano is a good eye for hockey and talent in hockey. He's a scout. He runs Pucks and Dreams. And he's maybe he'll be positive. He runs Pucks and Dreams. So we'll talk to him after the break. Stick with us. You're listening to Sports Intel on Jethro FM. As it's getting kind of hammered on sports radio, but we do try to keep things pretty even. We still had our Red Wings segment booked. I'm sure all of us that cover the Red Wings wanted a different result, but this will be a good guy to kind of do a little bit of a season recap here. Michael Devellano, he runs Pucks and Dreams. Good guest to have on. And as you know, Michael, we celebrate the thing of the day. We have 2 things of the day to choose from. So my first question for you is, what's your favorite board game? Because it is National Scrabble Day.
Oh my God, I hate board games. What is a good board game?
Well, this is why it's good that we have 2. Would you like?
I mean, there's always Monopoly, but I don't even know if I like that.
Okay, how about your favorite cobbler?
Cobbler?
Yeah, it's National Peach Cobbler Day.
There's apple cobbler, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I do like apple cobbler.
I also you can't do this with the first one necessarily because board game, well, you could use the homonym, I guess, with board game. We could make one up. But with cobbler, you could also choose, like, maybe a family member was a cobbler or there was a movie called The Cobbler. So, I mean, I'm trying to make some options for you because I don't think you liked any of those.
Isn't a cobbler someone that makes shoes?
Yeah. So, I mean, maybe you had a family member that did that.
What's funny is actually, so the last name Devellano, if you look in Italy, there is no Devellano. And the name Villano is from Tuscany, and we have a relative, I think you pronounce it Pedivilliano, so it's like walking of divine land. And we had a member of, they say, wore the toga, so they were kind of royalty way back. And during that time, the family crest was a golden boot.
That's amazing. See, this is why we ask these types of questions. See, that we wandered onto that. We were trying to figure out which one to do. We've already used the homonym of cobbler. I'm very happy about that because I like a good homonym, as our listeners know and probably are annoyed by. But no, we're happy to have you on the show. We had to start with something kind of cheery because we were talking about the Red Wings and how now it's kind of on local radio, sports radio. It's kind of a bit of a dumpster fire here because they're focusing on the most negative part of the Detroit sports scene. But what we argued is, hey, for being the most negative part of the Detroit sports scene, that's really not that negative. That's part of it. But I am curious to kind of diagnose what happened here and what you see happening because you have a very good eye for talent and for hockey in general. And I'm curious kind of how you saw. I know a lot of people said, well, they didn't have proper amount of energy. They didn't look right down the stretch. I'm sure injuries factor into it like they do with a lot of teams at the end of the season. But how did you see this last stretch?
So, I mean, post Olympics was obviously a problem because Larkin was clearly hurt, seemed like was hurt, and man, that really caused kind of that bad stretch, and they never really got back on track. So that was kind of an issue, and that really again exposed what you sensed, which was, wow, they're winning a lot of games early with some personnel that are maybe less than desirable, right? Like you're kind of got a couple horses in key positions that we didn't really think should be. So like having Andrew Kopp as your second line center, you just sensed that was not going to work. And JVR got on a hot streak and then went into hibernation, and that doesn't help because then the third line's not scoring. You could see Marco Kasper clearly bitten by the sophomore jinx. Hopefully he comes back from that. I tend to think that he will. But that initially in the beginning of the season, like you were penciling him in as the 2C between DeBrincat and Kane. So just that the depth on forward was really exposed. Like they scored 237 goals as a team, and really the minimum threshold I think to make the playoffs, they need 3 goals a game. And then again they end up above 3 goals a game again, or 3 goals a game against, right? So that math just never, ever works out. Like you can't, first of all, let in more goals than you score. And despite improved goaltending through John Gibson, they just don't have the depth offensively. So I think that was really, really exposed. There was a lot of positive stories, obviously, like with the young guys being worked in. The Emmett Finney story was excellent. Like I think that was great that you have such a smart player that made the jump and unexpectedly. Nate Danielson had a rough year just with injuries and playing time. But, I don't know. It's a little tough to watch teams that were kind of neck and neck with them, like the Ottawas and Buffalo, I would say specifically, and even Montreal. Like, they were all kind of in similar rebuild paths, and just feels like they got they had a little bit of leapfrog this year.
Especially because, talking about the injuries, that's why I was trying not to use that as an excuse, but it can be an explanation, like you said. With that was clear with Larkin and Raymond, and I remember mentioning that around the Olympic time because there was a guest on the show that was talking about how he wished Kane would have been part of the U.S. team because of this year. It's like I was going to say, can you imagine Kane after playing extra hockey and going all the way to the finals? Like that's what happens with those things, and you can make the argument however you want. You can say, well, they should be out there competing for the flag, and that's not a bad argument, and that's up to them. And I know Larkin doesn't regret it, especially with the way things ended up this year for him on that scene. But obviously, it did negatively affect how, even though he was really trying to. I mean, he was doing what he could. You could see he was his effort level was still very high.
Yeah, and he missed games. Like, he's only played he's missed 7 games, so that's kind of tough. Like, and you don't have anyone else to fall back on. Like, you're moving JT Compher up to the 1C. That is not going to work. Like, he has a hard time holding down the 2C, and really Kopp should not be on the second line. So that it's a problem that they have not addressed. And I know they're hoping for the young guys to do it, but it's like there's been zero movement to try to fill in those spots. And when they had the most success, I guess, was it 2 seasons ago, they really had a fourth line that combined for about 45 goals, and I don't think that exists. Like, you really need layers. You look at teams like Carolina, it's not like they have a 110-point player. They just have a lot of depth scoring, and that is a big difference. So even if they had brought in, I don't know, anyone, like a Robert Thomas or they would have overpaid maybe, but is that overpaying if you save the season and you get in the playoffs? I don't know.
And then you continue.
And ain't young, man. He's going to be 30 in July.
Right. Well, and then you continue the momentum a little bit, because I think that's where some of the disappointment comes in, probably especially on the player's standpoint, because they didn't make the move at the trade deadline last year. They did make a couple moves this year, but to your point, they didn't really make that top-down, let's move everybody down a rung, especially, kind of from the forward center standpoint. They did that on the defense as far as they got, a top 4 defensemen and moved everybody else down. But the closer we got to the trade deadline, I thought, man, maybe they're going to do this twice. Maybe they're going to do it and move everybody else down, like you said. And it just didn't come to fruition, probably for a bunch of reasons. I'm sure they made plays at guys. It just wasn't the right value for them at the time, I suppose.
Yeah, it's not like Thomas went somewhere else or Pedersen went somewhere else, or, some of the names, Trocheck. None of those guys moved anywhere, and that's probably because the prices were nuts. Even getting Falk, who's got a pretty favorable contract, he's 34, I think. You could see that's the piece they missed, right? Like, he is really, really good. He solidifies that second pairing. Helped, I think, Johansson. Like, Aljo's played so much better with him on that second pairing. I think that's been a good pairing, just because you see, now the skating of Albert Johansson really stands out. They're able to take more risks with that second pairing, and it pushes the play up. It does help them for sure. Like, that's a big piece that they were missing. But you still don't have a solution to this 1C, 2C problem, and you probably still need a top 6 winger.
Go ahead.
Yeah, it's just painful because it's not easy to solve that, but that's what they got to solve, and otherwise they're just going to be a bubble team. And even with that, they may not be a true contender. But at least they're in the playoffs and you have a chance.
Yeah, at least they're showing that progression. When we talked about it at the beginning of the year, that was the distinct goal. Make the playoffs, get over that hump, get that monkey off your back, and move forward. But we'll take a quick break, but I want to have that discussion about the kind of moving forward and how that looks with those positions, because they have a lot of young people in the system, but seemingly not necessarily in some of the spots that they need them kind of up and coming and waiting and ready. So I want to kind of take take those pieces and analyze them a little bit. But we'll come back with Michael Devellano of Pucks and Dreams. Stick with us. You're listening to Sports Intel on Jethro FM. Doing kind of a little bit of a postmortem, I guess, as they play. I mean, they're not done, but they're out of the playoff chase here. But I mean, they were close, and so you're talking about kind of the things that they need to do to get over the hump. But one of the things that's interesting is you have a very good eye for talent. That's why I want to talk about some of the young guys. And, they have a lot of young talent in this system. But when you talk about the needs don't necessarily match up as far as, okay, we've got this guy, he's getting ready to take over that spot, and we could see him filling that in the next year or two. They went from a very strange goalie situation where they didn't have a 1A and 1B. They had like a 2A through D there last year, and then they really didn't have a 1. Now they get Gibson, like you said, he's solidified that. Talbot's probably on his way out. He's been around for a long time. You've got young guys in the system, but now, I mean, you can only play one goalie unless I can interest anybody in my knuckle puck putting Goldberg out there like in the Mighty Ducks and then putting him out on the ice. I always try to propose this and nobody wants to do it, so we can't do that.
Good.
But you've got multiple goalies in the system, and yes, it's good to have depth, and they have good quality goalies, but you got to think there's a succession plan in place where Kosa's probably going to come up, then Augustine's going to go to the Griffins, but you've got Postava in the mix as well. I'm just curious how you see kind of some of the pieces matching up, if you see a trade happening or maybe trying to do something in free agency where they really haven't gotten remotely aggressive for the most part in Yzerman's tenure.
It's it's tough to tell. I mean, I think you've got to make some decisions preemptively on some of these guys and use some of the dry powder you have. It seems obvious, like the progression, because they have a bit of a funnel now. Like you probably see a Kosa in the NHL, or do you move him, right? I don't think you're going to see a Trey Augustine in the NHL. Like he looks like he's going to need time in the AHL. Postava, does he even come back? It's a good question. Gylander, question mark there. So I don't know. I guess you need to get aggressive, in my opinion. You're not going to get a top 6 guy by accident. Like I don't even know who's coming up this year that's available, but you could see Carolina, for example, made 2 kind of interesting moves, right? And it really, really helped them just on depth. Like one, they got Ehlers, who had a rough start, and it looked a little bit scary at first because both Ehlers and Svechnikov were struggling. But then in the end, there he is. He's got 24 goals and 68 points. And if you plug in 24 more goals into the Red Wings, that's a huge difference. Like that's maybe the difference between being in and out of the playoffs. And then the other move was the Keandre Miller deal. And then they got, Nikishkin, right? So you can go through other lineups and see similar pieces that get inserted in and just upgrade those spots. You can look at Buffalo. Like, what did Buffalo do that was different? They were healthier, and they got a new GM. And yet here they are. They got 106 points. I mean, Montreal's done it the right way. Like they got 3 lines now that all contribute offensively. They got the young goalies worked in with Dobas and Fowler, and they made the Dobson deal, which worked out really well. So I think you just got to realistically look, you got lots of prospects. Maybe it's time to move a couple and make an aggressive deal to fill in that 2C. Like when are you going to do it? In 2 years? Larkin's going to be 31 at the end of next season. That's kind of running out of time. Unless you plan on finishing last and get it in a season and getting a top guy, but I don't know. That's not easy. That doesn't help the immediate requirement.
Oh, yeah. That would be a regression. And they're kind of, I mean, we talk about team building a lot on this show because that's more interesting to me than okay, well, this play went wrong or what have you, the bigger picture. But it's tough to be in the middle. That's usually the toughest part.
Sheer hell.
For what's that?
Sheer hell.
Yeah. There's just it's we've seen it on the Detroit scene. The Lions were at the bottom, the Tigers were at the bottom, the Pistons were at the bottom. Look at how quickly they turned it around, especially the Pistons. That doesn't normally happen. But when you are able to amass those assets and get those high picks and then work those through the system. I know the Red Wings are in hockey is more akin to, say, the Major League Baseball. That's what we were talking about earlier today, actually, because, I mean, I know people, we live in a microwave society. People want to turn things around quickly, but hockey, it's tougher to do that. Other teams have done it, but it is a longer term kind of build, and they have gone from a very barren cupboard to a lot of things stocked up. But to the other side of that point, it's taken a while, and they're still not over the hump. And now they're kind of in the middle. So now, like you said, now what do we do? They have Larkin, who's their de facto leader, one of their most important players. He's getting older. Obviously, Kane and JVR are not long for this team and for the game in general, and they've been big contributors. Like they have a lot of young guys, but a lot of their key contributors are on the older side, especially now that you've added Falk to that group.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I like the addition of Falk. You see the dramatic impact a guy like that has. Like, it totally makes it easy for the coaches to throw out two pairs, right? Like, it makes that second pairing so much better. He contributes to the offense immediately, and the play picks up. Like, it's a big deal. But now you need to do the same thing on the top six, and frankly, you just need everyday contributors on the third line. Like, if you're going to do it with depth, you need 75 to 90 goals out of each of your top two lines, and then you need like 45 goals from your third line, and they're just not there. It's close, but they need to. It'll make some bodies. They got to figure out that second line center role. And I don't know if you have to trade a Casper or a Nate Danielson and maybe a pick. Like, if you get the right guy, then that could be a huge difference.
I would,
it'd be interesting to see. I keep playing with this, and this is total fantasy. Would be look at Anaheim, and as good a year they had, they might end up with the same number of points as Detroit in the playoffs. But there's a guy that's been pushed down, which is Mason McTavish, and I just wonder if he would fit in if he's going to get moved at some point here. You saw them move out Strome. Like, does Mason fit there long term?
It would be nice to get, because you got to think that's what Yzerman is going to be more interested in is an asset that's slightly undervalued or pushed down a depth chart, because he clearly has not gone for the big play for the most part, right? Paying what would be market value for a lot of these guys. So can you match up on that prospective value? Because like you said, I do think that is the play to try to get somebody, because they do need to get somebody in there, and use the fact that you have a decently stocked cupboard. Danielson, like you said, I thought Danielson might be one of those guys that would be on the way out at the trade deadline. I was hearing more and more kind of rumblings of that from the different people that cover the team, that I could see this happening, but also he didn't really do a lot to make his probably the peak value as well with the way things have gone so far in his career.
Yeah, I mean, obviously hurt after training camp, that did not help. Hurt again here at the end of the season. I like Nate. He's like everyone, prospects get old real quick. He's a 2004, so he's got to make the jump and he's got to take a spot. And then Marco Kasper needs to come back and show that it was just a sophomore slump. And failing that, like you can make a decision. Like, if you had packaged one or both of those guys up and got a Robert Thomas, Robert Thomas had injuries, and I'll just use that as an example, but just the math alone, this is a guy that is almost point a game. Like, he's 58 points in 61 games. Like, those 22 goals, even though he missed, so much time, that is a big difference maker for a team like Detroit right now. And just the fact that if Larkin had gone down and you had another guy to plug in, that might have worked. Like, somehow you need to have the voodoo math. You need to have that 90, 75, 45 split between the top three lines. And then you need to get like 45, 50 goals from the back end. So they seem to kind of be there on the back end, like that. The numbers are, seem like they'll line up. It's just they still have a lot of holes up front.
Who do you see? I know you analyzed a lot of the young guys. Who do you see? You mentioned Danielson, but who do you see making that leap? That maybe obviously Finney kind of came out of nowhere for people. Yep. But so we may have a case of that every once in a while. But do you see anybody kind of the current younger folks, either in I presume in Grand Rapids, because it'd be hard to skip over that. But do you see anybody in the system that you go, okay, this is a long-term solution sooner rather than later?
I don't think there's anyone obvious, right? Like Carter Bear is going to have a presumably like potentially long playoff run. Had a slow start. He's a total steal where he went, in my opinion, in the NHL draft. So there's potential there. But, he's going to take some time maybe. But maybe get lucky, because if you look at his contemporary, which is Ben Kindle, Ben is able to step in. Now, Ben also has the benefit of having like a Malkin and a Crosby and kind of that culture in Pittsburgh. So that didn't hurt his cause, and he's a super smart player. But I don't think I always thought Carter was a better player and a better prospect. So, that's got potential. Jenborg had a real good year. Kieskinen made the move over at the end of the season, so we'll see what he's able to do. Logically, you want ASP next year having a permanent spot. Like, I think he's shown he can run a second power play, and he's not a big guy and strong, so you're always going to have a little bit of matchup issues. But with Falk there, and if that bumps him down to a third pairing, like, I'd like to see him get just be in the NHL. So I think that's the one move. And then MBN, had a great year in the AHL. And I think Michael Brantzig-Nygaard, that's the type of big body, hard shot. He could really, even if he just carves out the third line and gets 10, 15 goals, that would be amazing. That would be a big help. That's kind of what they need to happen.
And though that doesn't seem outlandish, like you said, you never know.
Not guaranteed either.
No.
That's the problem. You don't see any obvious star prospect.
Yeah, the guys that are talked about more seem to be the guys that are a little further away. Like you're talking about Bear. Obviously, he came on strong. Plant came on strong. Had a good year, but we don't know the trajectory of these guys here and when they're actually going to arrive. But it's an interesting discussion, because you got to look to the future. Yeah, this year didn't go to plan, but it's moving on to the next off season and trying to solve some of these problems. So we appreciate you talking with us about it and taking us through everything. Make sure to tell people where we can direct them to, especially because you don't only cover the Red Wings. You're going to be covering hockey here on the way out, because there is a lot of hockey left. Maybe not for the Detroit folks, but there's a lot of hockey left. And we're in Grand Rapids.
So picking people to follow, right?
Yeah, exactly. You gotta still follow you. And then, hey, we're in Grand Rapids.
Me. I think I'm going to be following Anaheim and kind of hoping for them. And, I thought they had a great story and fun year, so that'll be interesting to watch. But yeah, it's a little tough when the Red Wings are out again. So you can follow me on Twitter /x.com at pucksandDreams_. That's probably the best place. There's also a YouTube, but I'm most active, I would say, on Twitter X.
He's got great analysis. Be sure to follow him. Yeah, we'll get back. We'll get back up there. We try not to get too down on this show. That's why we talk about silly things like cobblers and board games. But no, it's a good discussion and good to try to explain what happened and what can happen in the future. But we appreciate you joining us, and we'll look forward to talking to you again, maybe as the season rolls around next season here. Amazing. Well, have fun in the playoffs. Hopefully, somebody. I mean, the Griffins will have fun. Yeah, right. Well, they're a contender, right? So that's legit. Yeah. I will be covering them to a degree because I'm friends with a couple people on the beat here. So we'll be moving the hockey segment to the local Griffins. They're a station sponsor and everything too. So we want to root for them, and then hopefully they can do some things, and we'll see some of those future Red Wings maybe in the Griffins playoffs here. Sounds good. Thank you for having me on. All right. Thanks, Michael. We'll talk to you later. All right, see you. Thanks to Michael Devellano. Appreciate him coming on. Good discussion about the Wings. Hey, it didn't work out, but we're going to turn to a team that is working out pretty well, and people are not talking about them enough. On the stuff that Jeff listens to, I can't imagine they're talking a lot of Pistons right now, and there should be more Pistons talk because we're headed into the playoffs. They're the number 1 seed. There's a lot of interesting stuff going on. They're cooking with gas right now. So we're going to talk to Eric Vincent of Clutch Points and talk about the Pistons and what he thinks is going to happen in the playoffs here. So stick with us. You're listening to Sports Intel on Jethro FM. This is Eric Vincent of Clutch Points. Eric, I feel like people should be happier about the Pistons as some of these other things are not going well. But as you may remember from your first appearance, we do like to celebrate the thing of the day, and we couldn't decide. So I've got 2 questions for you. Do you have a favorite board game? The last guest did not like board games, which I was not prepared for that answer. And it's National Scrabble Day. So I'm curious if Eric Vincent has a favorite board game.
Ooh, a favorite board game. I used to be a beast at Sorry. Whenever I had to play with my siblings, we would always have Sorry loaded up at the crib. It was either that or Monopoly, one of those 2. I mean, I think I still got it over there, too. I think I still could probably win over there. But those got to be my top 2, probably.
You can never have a short game of Monopoly, and you can never have a happy game of Monopoly. That's what I would say about Monopoly.
Oh, no.
If somebody's ending up mad. The board's going flying with Monopoly.
Oh, yeah.
I feel like that's how that inevitably goes, and I liked it too. But that's how it goes. Go ahead, Eric.
Yeah, we would always say that too. Like, y'all be ready? Y'all ready to hate each other before this, right? Like, okay, as long as we go in, we have a whole disclaimer as siblings before we get into the game. So yeah, that's always a rule for the game.
Exactly. That little thimbles going flying, that Scottish Terrier or whatever it is, that piece is going flying. Everything's flying in the air. All the money. But the other one. So you had a more favorable answer to the board games. But we'll ask you the other one. Do you have a favorite cobbler? It's Peach Cobbler Day.
Ooh, it would probably have to be peach cobbler. My grandma was a pro in the kitchen. Like, anytime we would come through on Sundays with my cousins and the rest of my family, she would always have either a cheesecake whipped up or her world famous peach cobbler. So we would be addicted to that come the weekends with my family. So yeah, I got to go peach cobbler as number 1.
That's a good one. You can't go wrong, well, with cobbler in general, really, but that's a classic one. So glad we had more favorable answers to those. But it's fitting. We're talking about the Pistons. You're happier. You're upbeat. We're getting ready for playoffs. I know that wasn't the case with our Red Wings analyst, but I don't think people are talking enough about the Pistons in general. We do a segment on them every week. I'm a big basketball guy. It's arguably my favorite sport, that and football. And I feel like it's an underrated team, but I'm curious what your thoughts are. You're a credentialed reporter. You're in the building all the time. You're covering them. What's your thoughts on this team? Because they were, in my opinion, they're underrated, and I think they're right where they want to be. They're number 1. They had the best record in the East. They got to 60 wins. I know they wanted to do that, and still they're not the favorite to come out of the East by most national pundits, quote unquote, and even the sports books at this point.
Yeah, I think I mentioned this last time we talked about it, but it seems like whenever the Pistons are doing great or things are trending in the right direction, they always have to overprove themselves to get the respect that they've already deserved. To be number 1 in the East basically for the entire season, to beat up on the elite teams, to have an offseason that they had where there's a lot of question, there's a lot of speculation where things like the Malik Beasley signing not happening and working out, losing Tim Hardaway Jr., hoping you would see some growth within the young players but not being 100% sure, Jaden Ivey coming back from an injury. There was not a lot of assurance that the Pistons were going to take that next step. We would hope to see it from guys like Cade Cunningham and Jalen Duren, but they have over-exceeded, and you're 100% right. It still feels like a lot of the national pundits are still giving them that red-headed stepchild treatment, and I don't really understand it at all. I feel like they have done a phenomenal job proving themselves, winning 60 games, for the 3rd time in franchise history. Again, being able to compete and stand up to a lot of the elite teams in the Eastern Conference and the Western Conference, to have as many guys as they have up for awards as well in eligibility, they have done more than enough to prove themselves as worthy for respect in the NBA. But unfortunately, they're going to have to overprove it, and they're going to have a chance coming up in the playoffs soon this week.
But if you could pick kind of a spot for them to be in, I feel like this is ideal. I don't know how they've found their way into this spot, mainly because of the things you just described, I guess. But the fact that they have been pretty dominant this year. They won 60 games. They've dominated teams. They play a very dominant style of basketball, but they're still the underdog somehow. Most teams can't manage that. And so I like where they are, especially because obviously when Cade went down, I think everybody got quite nervous, as they should. He's the team leader. He was on kind of an MVP pace before he got hurt. He's been playing very well this year. He's the team leader. Everything goes through him, but they have also played remarkably well without him. And I feel like there were certain players that needed either a bit of a reset or a bit of a boost when he went out. And it wasn't just the players you'd expect. Like Danis Jenkins came back and looked very good in that starting role. I think he's rolling now going into the playoffs. That's kind of an obvious one. He was the most direct recipient. But, man, who knew we were going to have a rejuvenated Tobias Harris at this point in the season?
Yeah, the buy-in for this team has just been extraordinary. It goes to the brilliance of a J.B. Bickerstaff, who I think should be the runaway coach of the year. There's been a lot of conversation about Joe Mazzulla or Mitch Johnson maybe pushing him, but I don't think it should be close. I think what J.B. has been able to do with getting his team to buy into the next man up mentality, showing that they can win without Cade Cunningham, and even without Cade. Like, a lot of the games they've had without Jalen Duren available in the lineup. Obviously, Beef Stew was suspended after the big brawl that happened with Charlotte. Tobias has missed a lot of time. Asar has missed time. Like, they've had to do a lot of mixing and matching, and it really hasn't mattered. JB has done a great job of getting everybody to buy into the defensive mentality of this Detroit Piston identity, and it's worked in tremendous fashion. I mean, being able to see Jalen Duren, take another step in his growth outside of just being the lob threat for Cade or, just an athletic dunker. He's now shown that he can be a playmaker. He's still one of the best rebounders in basketball. He's excelled and grown as a defender, and now we've seen him take steps in self-creation and getting his own buckets, which is a huge plus for this team because they've always needed another star next to Cade Cunningham. Now you have that with a guy like Duren who's set to, get a huge contract extension offer probably this offseason. So the growth that we've seen from them, and like you said, Tobias Harris, Danis Jenkins, even Duncan Robinson taking steps forward. He's a guy that was literally never known as a defender, and he has been able to make plays in ways outside of just being a spot-up shooter. You've seen this team grow in so many different ways, buying into the defensive identity, and it's a big reason why they're number one in the Eastern Conference and have proven to be how great they can be as a team.
That's a great point because I know that the defense as a whole is the emphasis. They've got a lot of defensive stars. Obviously, Thompson has been a star defensively this year, Beef Stew, but people really have raised the level like Tobias Harris. The thing that opened my eyes last year, I feel like this was last year during the playoffs, when he was guarding Karl Anthony Towns when they were playing the Knicks. It was like, man, he is doing a lot more defensively than I thought he would. Now he's been more active in the passing lanes. I feel like we're seeing that a lot. Yeah, you're going to expect that from Thompson and Stewart and Ron Holland and guys that have that motor, but I didn't necessarily expect it from guys like Harris, who's aging kind of like fine wine at this point, aging very well. Kevin Huerter, once he came in, he was a seamless fit, and he's been a lot more active and better on defense than he was given credit for on his other teams. I thought his shot would improve, but I didn't necessarily think he'd buy into that defensive identity. But he's getting in the passing lanes with Javonte Green and Ron Holland and Thompson and a lot of the other guys that are always – I mean, there are no passing lanes for these other teams. Everybody's in the passing lane.
Yeah, and we just talked about J.B. Bickerstaff and what he's been able to do in establishing the foundation and the identity of this franchise. So much credit also needs to be given to Trajan Langdon as well, because knowing where the Pistons came from last season, winning 40-plus wins, getting to the first round of the playoffs, and now taking a step forward to win 60 games, be number one in the Eastern Conference, And you would think, if you were told at the beginning of the season, you would think maybe they traded for a star to get there. Maybe they found Cade's ace. Maybe they found, another, big bona fide like star to go along with this foundation. They did it by just adding guys that bought into the system of what they have. And not even guys just that have bought into the system. Guys that really, if you looked at in terms of how they were playing with the previous teams they were on, like Tobias Harris, who unfortunately had kind of a bad rep with the Sixers, Duncan Robinson, who people kind of had some questions on how he fit long-term with Miami, Malik Beasley, who had been kind of a journeyman, same with Tim Hardaway Jr. These are guys that really were just looking for a opportunity to kind of cement themselves with a team. Even Javonte Green, who played all 82 games for this team and made a lot of big key plays to help these teams get to a lot of victories. The Pistons have really done a great job of just taking a lot of scrappy guys with a mindset that they were ready to do whatever it takes to play winning basketball. And to be able to squeeze out all that and to still see Cade Cunningham play an MVP level of basketball, to see the young foundation, guys like Ron Holland, Jalen Duren, Asar Thompson, Beef Stews, to see all these guys take that natural step forward without having to gamble on trading one of them or gambling for a star like a lot of other teams do. It's so rare with what the Pistons have done. I've said all season that if the way people always look at the NBA and question, the way that the style is, with all the spam threes and the foul baiting. The Pistons are one of those teams that don't need to rely on any of that. The way that they play, I think, is honestly rejuvenating and kind of saving the NBA with the ability to play defense, care about regular season, growing rivalries, growing young talent. It's just something that's kind of become rare in the NBA today, and I think a lot of credit needs to be given to Trajan Langdon and the foundation leadership of this franchise for the Pistons.
I agree. There's so many. That's the problem when we do these segments. It's 30-minute segments, but there's so many different parts of this organization that you could talk about, because we were talking about this with the Red Wings analyst in the last segment. The hockey and baseball are kind of a longer term turnaround. Football and basketball can go a little faster, but it's not supposed to go this fast in basketball.
Right.
You're not supposed to go from 60 losses 2 seasons ago to 60 wins this season, and the Bickerstaff should not have been available to be able to be picked up as their coach. He's done an excellent job. Langdon did a great job picking him up and acquiring a lot of the other players. So yeah, there's a lot of credit to go around. I want to discuss some elements of that credit, and then also kind of preview what you think is going to happen here coming into the playoffs and the rotations, because they do have so many players that are playing well. But we'll come back with Eric Vincent of Clutch Points. Stick with us. You're listening to Sports Intel on Jethro FM.
From the GarbarinoRoofs.com studios.
Country with a Twist, Jethro FM, 1530 AM, WYGR, Wyoming, Grand Rapids, 94.9 FM, Grand Rapids, 99.5 FM, Lowell, and Jethro South, 980 AM, WAKV Otsego, Plainwell, 98.9 FM, Otsego, and 105.1 FM, Kalamazoo. Available worldwide at jethro.fm.
I'm curious about two things here. We got to talk about the rotation, but first I want to talk about the potential matchup, because obviously being in one of the top 2 positions, they now have 4 teams that they could play, which is still kind of a wild playoff format. I know we've had it for a couple years, but it does keep it interesting that they really don't know who they're going to get at this point. But I'm curious what you think of the 4 teams that they're going to play, and if some of those matchups worry you more than others.
Yeah, I'm still honestly trying to get used to this play-in thing myself, too. It's still so weird with how the NBA has tinkered with their playoff system. But, the Pistons are in an advantageous position where they now get to sit and wait and see what these 4 teams do. The Orlando Magic, the Philadelphia 76ers, Charlotte Hornets, and the Miami Heat. For me personally, I believe at this point there's a couple teams that I think – first of all, I think whoever they play, I think the Pistons will be able to beat convincingly. I do believe that some of them are a little more prepared than others. I do like any Eric Spoelstra coach team with Miami. I don't care what seed they're in. Knowing how Miami is played, they just had a 83-point performance from Bam Adebayo, and they always play the Pistons tough. So I would love to see for the Pistons to avoid them, even though I do still think they could beat them with probably about 6-7 games. Outside of that, I think they have a really good opportunity to play against a team like the Hornets, The Hornets are a very talented team, but they come off as a very unorganized team, very immature. And when they're, a little pushed to the edge, as we saw in the last game, they're not a real crisp team with fourth-quarter execution. So a team like that with a lot of talent but not a lot of discipline can be had in a playoff setting, especially against a team like the Pistons that rely on physicality. The Sixers, they're a team that's injury-riddled, so I don't really think the Pistons have a lot to worry about with them. I do believe they can have their way. Joel Embiid I believe, just came off of surgery, so I think that's going to be an advantage for the Pistons where Jalen Duren's not going to have to worry about defending on the perimeter, which is a huge plus for him. And Orlando's a good team. They always play the Pistons tough as well. But they can be a little bit confusing offensively. They have a lot of talent with Paolo Banchero, Franz Wagner out of Michigan, acquiring Desmond Bane this offseason. They have a lot of talent on that team, even the role guys like Jalen Suggs, De Silva. They have a lot of guys that can play well and make you stretch, but they can be unorganized and a little undisciplined too. So if you can frustrate them, and if the Pistons can stick to their defensive identity and turn those kind of teams over, that's a huge plus for them. The Pistons have been a team that even if they don't play their best game through the first three quarters, if they're not shooting properly, they normally play their best ball in the fourth quarter, and a lot of these teams in the play-in do not. So that's going to be a huge advantage for them, and I think it's going to favor them big time whenever they have to see them, especially with the home court advantage playing at LCA as well.
A lot of great points in there. I want to add a couple things. One, if they play the Hornets, get all the ambulances ready for that game. That's going to be a rough. I agree that they've got the advantage, but man, there's some bad blood. If you want an old school rivalry, that's kind of developing into one here as we speak with these two teams playing recently. But I agree with you on the Heat. I think that is kind of the team that would worry me the most, mainly because Spoelstra is kind of criminally underrated too. I think Bickerstaff is. We talked about that, but for a guy that's had such longevity and really has had to me, a Hall of Fame level career with his longevity and how much he's overachieved over his career here so far. But you've got, who knew that Bam Adebayo was going to be the number 2 scorer in the NBA all time, most points in a game. So they've got some players that are sneaky good, like a lot of the Spoelstra teams. He's a do-it-all kind of guy. I think that could be a tough series, and you do want maybe the team that won't get them worn down too much, because I think that's going to be a key for the Pistons as a whole for their style. Can you imagine playing the Pistons 4 times in a row, 5 times in a row, 6 times in a row, or if it goes to 7, having 7 times in a row playing the Pistons? Those teams are going to be fatigued if they have to go into a 7-game series against them.
Definitely so. Something that the Pistons have done a really good job of is even if they don't play their best game or suffer a loss, they haven't had one stretch in the season where they played 2 bad games in a row. It just doesn't happen with this team. JB Bickerstaff does a really good job of helping this team, get back in order whenever they slip up. They're able to, weather the storm of certain issues. Like a big point of emphasis was what their shooting was going to look like, and if they're going to be able to keep up with other teams throughout the playoffs, with their offensive output. But luckily, they haven't had to chase that kind of game against any opponents that they played against. They stick to their style. They play defense. They beat you up in the paint. They, run in fast break and transition opportunities. They have a superstar that can help weather the storm if they need it as well. And they have other players like a Tobias Harris, who we talked about earlier, who's excelled in half-court execution as a veteran who posts up really well, moves the ball really well, and has done a really good job of kind of being that stabilizer for this team in half-court sets when they need it the most. So they have a lot of the recipes needed to stand up to a lot of these teams. Like, there's a lot of teams that are talented in the Eastern Conference. I've been saying it all season. Like, people have talked about the West like they're just miles ahead of the East, and I've never believed that. I think there's a lot of talent in the Eastern Conference, but there's a reason that the Pistons have been able to last the test of time as the number 1 seed and to clinch the way that they did. So I think they have a lot of things working in their advantage, in their favor, and it goes to their depth, it goes to the talent, and it definitely goes to the mindset that JB Bickerstaff has helped install within this team.
I agree with you, and I'm curious. So probably 2 more questions. I'm curious about who scares you as far as if they do move on from the first round? Who do you think are the biggest threats? Because we were talking about this. The Knicks have been rated above them by a lot of the sports books as far as a higher likelihood of getting to the finals. The Cavs, the Celtics, I can see for a lot of reasons, but the Cavs and the Knicks have been in there a bunch, and I don't know. I don't know about the Knicks this year. I'd be curious about their mileage. Their depth is not good. They're going to be a very different team than the Pistons, but I'm curious who kind of are the biggest threats in your mind out of those teams or the rest of the teams in the East here.
I've been on my own in this conversation because a lot of people are scared of the Cavaliers. A lot of people have poked concern about the Celtics, and those are good teams. I understand, some of the worry that people have, but I'm not super worried about playing against a team like the Celtics. The Pistons, I think, have enough defensive wings to throw at a Jason Tatum, who's still kind of trying to recover from his injury, and Jaylen Brown as well, who's a good scorer, but I think he can be limited to somewhat of an extent if you expose his weaknesses, like making him go left-handed. I think they have the ability to match up against some of these teams. A team that really worries me that I think is honestly going to upset the New York Knicks in the first round is the Atlanta Hawks. Those teams that are the top three ilk outside of the Pistons, whether it's the Knicks, the Cavaliers, and the Celtics, they all have championship or bust expectations. I think outside of that, everybody else is kind of playing with house money, and I don't think a lot of those teams are built for it right now outside of maybe the Celtics. If the Celtics came out, I wouldn't be surprised, but I don't think the Cavaliers are championship ready. I don't think they're a good rebounding team. They don't have a lot of proven scoring. I mean, they do have a good shooting bench, but their front court can still be had if you put a little bit of physicality on them. We know what the Knicks are. We saw Isaiah Stewart put Karl Anthony Towns in a blender, and he's their biggest X factor. Brunson's going to do what he does. The other guys are going to do what they do. But if you can muzzle up Karl Anthony Towns, you can have the Knicks done in 5 games. To me, a team that really worries me is a team with house money like the Atlanta Hawks. They have done a really good job of kind of floating under the radar, but still, in the second half of the season, they came on extremely strong. I think they won like 11, 10 games in a row. Having a guy like Jalen Johnson who's playing at an all-NBA level, Nickeil Alexander-Walker who's in the MIP conversation. They have great defenders around like Dyson Daniels, a piston killer in C.J. McCollum. They have a really good big in Ngakoue that plays really well for what they need. And they're really young, too, so they'll be able to match up with the speed and the athleticism that the Pistons have. Like, again, I understand the pedigree of some of the prove-it guys like a Donovan Mitchell in Cleveland or the 2 stars in Boston. I understand what those guys bring, or the 2 stars in New York as well. I understand what having that kind of pedigree brings in the playoffs, but I don't know. I feel like with how the Pistons have been playing, based on their depth, based on their defense, it doesn't scare me as much as a team that's playing with house money like the Atlanta Hawks are. I think the Pistons are built for it, and it's going to be interesting to see how they match up once they see them whenever the series pops up.
I agree. There's a lot of intrigue, I think, in this particular playoff run here, and I mean the East is kind of wide open. If you've got the number one that isn't really the favorite, I guess it's kind of wide open in favor of the Pistons because I think they do have a legitimate chance. I think people are underrating them. I'm curious on the way out about what you see happening with the rotation because obviously they normally shore up the rotation, shorten it. That has not been to the Pistons' advantage this year. The deeper they go, they're one of the deepest teams in the league. I mean, we're seeing this with G League guys that they're pulling up, not only Danish Jenkins, but others. Obviously, they're not going to have all those guys necessarily running the G League players that we've been seeing at the end of the season. But this is a very deep team. I'm curious where you think that Bickerstaff's going to kind of cut it off here.
Yeah, this is, to me, the biggest question mark the Pistons have coming into the postseason. We know what the starting 5 is going to do. Beef Stew is going to get minutes off the bench. I do see them playing Ron Holland. Danish Jenkins is going to be, off the bench as well, definitely getting some minutes. I think they're going to play Kevin Huerter. After that, it can be a crapshoot, but I think they have, like you said, they've leaned on having depth and using that against other teams as their weapon. Like JB talks about it all the time when we talk to him in post-game sessions. He says our depth is a weapon, and we're not scared to use it. Even guys like Karis LeVert, Marcus Sasser kind of coming in as a break-the-glass guy, and one of the most unsung heroes on the roster for this Detroit Pistons team, and Paul Reed. Every time he's had to come in and is filled in for Beef Stew or is filled in for Jalen Duren, he's been unbelievable. Even in his last game where he scored 24 points and didn't miss a shot, he was fantastic against the Pacers. So they have the ability to lean on 11 or 12 different guys, and to their advantage as well, it's not like they play them in consistent rotations where, okay, we got to get Herter in this lineup with these guys, or we have to get Ron Holland in this matchup with these guys. They play them with whoever they want, and they just all kind of buy in and make things happen. So it's super unpredictable. It's really unorthodox because, like you said, in the playoffs, the NBA teams like to shrink their rotations down to 9 or 10 guys, but I don't think JB is going to do that. I think he's going to stick with what's been working for him throughout the regular season. I think he's going to try to take his opponents off by guard, and I could see this being a weapon that works in their advantage, especially against a lot of teams that aren't as athletic, that aren't as strong, aren't as fast, and won't be able to last 4 quarters against the Pistons, especially if they got to play in a 7-game series as well. I think they're going to lean on that depth pretty heavily through 11, 12 guys, and hopefully they can keep up and, put some pressure on their opponents because I think it's going to work for them.
I agree. I say take them out to the deep water and see who can swim out there because I don't think a lot of teams can hang with them with that depth, especially that they have. And like you said, I think the break glass in case of emergency, I think that's the key point of there might be guys that maybe aren't seeing the floor a ton, but there might be a situational usage idea for probably several of the players on the team, basically, where you're saying, oh, okay, this guy hasn't seen the floor much, but I think we need more of him right now. I think we need more Sasser. Or I think Paul Reed can give us some juice or whatever it is. There's a lot of players that you could kind of, I'm not worried about their energy level to begin with, but if they do get a little flat, there's a lot of guys that could give them juice at different positions there. So should be fun to watch. I'm envious that you're going to get to cover them and follow them around, and the fact that you have been able to all season here. But be sure to tell people where they can follow you on your social media and otherwise.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for the time, man. Always a pleasure being here. If you guys lock in with me, you can follow me on social media at I am Eric Vincent. You can follow all my Pistons coverage on clutchpoints.com. And I also have a YouTube channel as well, a Top Title Detroit, where I post a lot of clips and post-game coverage on my YouTube page where I'm talking to JB Biggerstaff, some of the players, some of the shoot-around highlights. You can follow some of my coverage on there as well. Again, man, thank you so much for the time. Always a pleasure being able to chop it up. And like you said, unlike the Red Wings, this is a good time to be a Piston fan. So good change of pace for the Detroit faithful.
Exactly. We've got a lot of good sports to cover here. I'm not worried. We're going to have a lot of Pistons coverage, but we're happy you can be a part of it, and we'll look forward to talking to you again soon here.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much. Appreciate y'all.
All right. Thanks, Eric. Talk to you soon. Thanks to Eric Vincent. Appreciate him coming on. Like I said, great stuff with the Pistons. If you're not paying attention to them, now is the time here. That this is going to be a fun playoff run. They're a fun team to watch. They're old school. It's back to the whatever era you like. Bad boys, going to work group. They're in that same mold. They just need a nickname. I've been working on that all year. I know they have.
There doesn't seem to be a definition yet.
Yeah.
What we can put together.
They have like the dogs, the nasty dogs. We need something that flows a little bit better. I still don't even like the going to work group. That didn't work for me. It's hard to do as well as Bad Boys. I get it, but right. We'll brainstorm. Maybe that'll be a subject for our last segment here with Jeff and I in studio. But before then, we've got Alex Urban of the Eat 'Em Up podcast. We're going to talk some Tigers and diagnose the young budding season here with the Tigers. So stick with us. You're listening to Sports Intel on Jeff. It's young into the Tigers season. I was telling Jeff at the beginning of the show that I was listening to a podcast that was a little bit down on the early Tiger season, kind of mirroring some of the fans. It may or may not have been the podcast of the guest that I'm about to bring on. But first, I've got to ask him 2 questions. We're celebrating 2 things of the day here because we couldn't decide in the first segment. So it is National Scrabble Day. Alex Urban, what's your favorite board game?
Ooh, that's a good one, Ryan. I might have to go with the old school Battleship. honestly.
Ooh,
I know that's a little
the first
cliche, but that's my
That's
favorite.
a good one. Yeah, that's a classic. That's a fun one and very unique for that time. The last guest chose Monopoly, and I said that basically turns into a bloodbath. Like that's just you're going to the hospital with that one, or at least my family was. I don't know about other families. We also injured some people with spoons too. That's not a board game, but that might indicate to you what we've got going there with that side of the family. But the other question is, what is your favorite cobbler? It's National Peach Cobbler Day.
Oh my goodness! I mean, you gotta live it up for the name itself, the peach cobbler. I mean, that is an absolute A+ for me. I don't know if I could say I've had too many other cobblers, maybe like a blueberry cobbler, but peach cobbler, I'm all about everything peach. I think that's a great choice.
That's a good one. I was secretly hoping that someone would pick the homonym and talk about the movie The Cobbler or a cobbler in their family, but that was really a long shot. I would have had to do some deep research with okay, let's bring on this guest based on the fact that he has a cobbler in his family from 3 generations ago. His uncle was a cobbler, but no, good answers. We got a lot of peach cobbler. That nobody really went away from that too much.
The original.
It's
the
OG.
OG.
It's a classic. I can't argue with it. But no, we're happy to have you on, Alex. We're happy to talk some baseball. We've been waiting a while. Now we're doing it every week, and we're happy about that. But I'm curious about your evolution here with your opinion on the Tigers, because I listened to, I think, what was the most recent podcast. You may have released one since then, but I listened to the Thursday podcast, Eat 'em Up podcast. Be sure to follow him. It's a great podcast, him and Jordan Hall. But I noticed that you guys were a little down. I imagine the mood might have improved a little bit since then.
Oh, certainly. I think you caught us right as they were getting their butts kicked out in Minnesota. And it's not so much down on the season and our outlook for how good they can be, but frustration with the way that they were playing baseball. It just looked like the swings were not there. The approaches at bat by at bat were not there. The silly defensive miscues, some of the people that you really leaned on or looked to, have a great season kind of fumbled. But you got to keep it all in perspective too. I mean, it was quite literally frigid out there in Minnesota. Not that the Twins didn't have to play in the same elements, but you kind of chalk that up. But they also looked pretty poor in Arizona. So it was a really mixed bag. I actually had the opportunity to go out to San Diego for opening day, and that was a great experience. But we're certainly feeling a little bit better following the sweep of the Marlins that we were last week, namely because you saw Riley Green get going a little bit. Spencer Torkelson, while he's not getting the hits, he's getting on base quite a bit. And then Kerry Carpenter, he's really hot and cold right now. But to see some of those guys get on track really kind of brought an even keel for me, because they're going to need those guys moving forward.
Definitely. It has been an interesting early season. One of the things that I looked at too, because, I like to look at the trends. I like to look at kind of what's happening. Are there slow starts to the season, which they typically do have. Obviously, there's weather issues with a team in the north. They were in Minnesota. They haven't been home as much as they've been away, and their home road splits are pretty stark. They were pretty stark last year, and in the early going here, it's looking like they're going to need to take advantage of those home games, because the splits are already pretty large, a pretty large difference here between their home and road splits. I think it's 5-1 and 2-8 or something like that at the moment.
Yeah, and, throughout time, maybe there's a couple odd years here and there, but home field advantage has been huge for this team. They play well in Detroit. They understand the ballpark very well, particularly the pitchers, and how it can be a fly ballpark and not hurt you too much. But, that's true, too. They went down into Arizona. They didn't have a good showing, but they usually don't play well on the West Coast. And then I think they caught a Minnesota team maybe just at the wrong time or the right time, whatever you want to look at it, and maxed out with a cold. But I think it was a really good thing for them to come home. The crowds were there. It was really nice to see a strong crowd at Comerica Park for an early April game. And I think they're feeding off of that. This team has a lot of expectations, and you didn't know how they were going to come out of the gate with those expectations. I mean, a lot of people are talking World Series around here just based on the pitching alone. But certainly it was nice to see them respond to the home crowd and vice versa. And hopefully they can keep it up this season, because when Comerica Park is rolling, it's among the loudest and the best environments of anywhere in baseball.
definitely. And I'm curious on your takes on the early season here, because this is an interesting team. We were having a similar conversation about the Red Wings, because obviously baseball and hockey are kind of the most similar from like a team building standpoint, and the vast depth that you get through the minor leagues, and also some of kind of the ups and downs, people getting streaky. Baseball is best known for that, but hockey is that way as well. And it just seemed like maybe the units were not well aligned in those first few games. We get the phrase complementary football a lot especially from Dan Campbell here in the local market, but it happens a lot across the league. It seemed like when one thing was working for the Tigers in the early going, then something else was blowing up. Maybe not everything at the same time, probably in a couple games, but maybe not everything at the same time. But it was like when the starting pitching was off to a good start, maybe the relievers weren't having a good outing. That different hitters have been cold in comparison to some of the other guys that have been a little bit hotter. But I'm curious kind of how you've seen that. I know you guys were talking about being worried about the effort level as a whole, but it just didn't seem to align super well in those first 10 or so games either.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. It was almost like if they scored 6 runs, they gave up 8, or if they, held the opponent to 1 run, they didn't score at all. It's just the levers were not pulling together. They were not playing cohesive team baseball. This is a team that is built on run prevention and pitching, and they just weren't doing a lot of that. And I think what a lot of the concern from the fan base, and maybe even a little bit from Jordan and I, is how they started, is it just looks so similar to the second half of last year when they had that really big swoon. They gave up the big divisional lead to Cleveland. And you come into spring training when Scott Harris didn't make any moves on the offensive side of the ball, and you say, okay, what team is going to show up? Is it going to be the team that we saw in the first half that was top 10 in all the offensive categories, or is it going to be the second half team that they really struggled to put runs across the board and obviously went through that terrible losing streak? So it looked to me in the early part of the season like last year, which kind of gave me concern. But you also have to turn the page. I'm a big believer that momentum doesn't necessarily carry over season to season, certainly. So it was way too early to write the team off. We certainly weren't doing that. But I know quite a few of the people, at least on Tigers Twitter, that interact with us were hitting the panic button a little early. And we all kind of just need to take a collective breath and say, okay, if you've got Colt Keith lighting the world on fire, you got Kevin McGonigal doing some really good things, you only have to wait until the Riley Greens or the Kerry Carpenters gets going until you have something good. I saw a really interesting metric today that they are leading the league in BABIP, working against them, that's batted balls in play. So essentially they're putting the ball, on the ground in the air, but they're just not being rewarded for it. And things like that really seem to even out as the season goes on, which is really encouraging for me because it means the best is yet to come offensively. And I think we generally know what they're going to have in the pitching side of the ball. Which is, an elite 1-2, and then some solid yet, maybe unspectacular guys 3 through 5.
Well, you guys talked about that on the most recent podcast. You were talking about maybe lacking the potential kind of star level players on this team, the go-to guys. So I want to come back with that after the break. I got a couple follow-up questions from the most recent podcast here, but we'll come back with Alex Urban of the Eat 'em Up podcast. Stick with us. You're listening to Sports Intel on Jethro FM. Certain players are playing well. Certain players are waiting to take off. Now I want to ask you a question we were talking about in the break here, because my producer, Jeff, was talking about maybe starting the season a little bit later. Do we like that idea? I know everybody tries to mess with baseball. At one point, I think we had trampolines in the outfield with one show I listened to. But I'm curious about that because, yeah, those opening series, especially the one in Minnesota, was pretty brutal. I get that both teams have to play in that, but the weather didn't seem ideal for either team.
No, and we kind of can all look at each other, fan bases across fan bases, and say, who's enjoying this? Is it, the fans sitting out there in 34 degrees, we're all bundled up. The players don't like to hit in it. The pitchers can't get a good feel on the ball. So it's not an enjoyable experience for everyone. I think I tweeted from our show account, the people that were there are absolutely true baseball fans. But I have said, and a lot of people disagree with me because it would be less baseball, but I would shorten the season by 10, 20 games. 10 games on either side of it and start a little bit later and end earlier too, because the World Series butts up till November, so you're kind of dealing with the same weather on both sides of it. But I do think it starts way too early. And half the time when I do a big tailgate for opening day every year, we've been rained on, we've been snowed on, and it's miserable. This year was outstanding, the best year we've ever had. But we've had many years where we're huddled up with our coats on because it's so early in the spring.
It's funny when you do try to mess with baseball because people don't really like any changes, and it's like shorten the season. Well, there's 162 games. Can we maybe shorten them by a few? No. We can't change it at all. But no, it is tough, and it depends on who you play against, what region you're in. Obviously, the Tigers being in the north, the weather is a factor, but hopefully now we've got warmer weather ahead and warmer seasons ahead for the Tigers. But I'm curious about a discussion you were having about Riley Green on the podcast, because obviously this is a gritty team in the makings of a Detroit team, and you were talking about how you can't necessarily have the star power to overcome with this type of team, but Riley Green is one of those guys that does seem to be on the precipice at times. He's got a lot of baseball ability. He's a multiple tool player, but he's got some things to work out with his plate discipline and how he handles that. So I'm curious how you guys are seeing that in the early year, because he is a bit of a perplexing player. Even in how he runs, he's perplexing to me. So there's a few things that are perplexing about him.
Perplexing is the perfect word to describe Riley Green. You look at the kid, and he was someone who tore up the minor leagues. He had a much thinner frame then and a little bit more athletic, and he was diving all over the place. He played a lot of center. And then as he's grown, and he's still, I think, only 25, 26 years old, so he's still a young guy, not even in his prime for age, but he put on more muscle, and he started to hit a lot more home runs. But I think he started to sell out a little bit for contact, for power, because you can see in his big looping swing, it's got that big uppercut that everybody seems to talk about, and that's worked for him. But the one thing that I worry about with Riley Green is as he continues to age and maybe loses a little bit of that bat speed or a little bit of the ability to get around, is he going to have the same impact, or is it going to lead to more strikeouts? Now, on the flip side of that, obviously, he's come out publicly and said, he understands the strikeouts are a problem, and he was looking to cut them down. And he spent the majority of the offseason, looking at pitch recognition and kind of thinking, how can I change my pitch selection? And I think it's paid off. His strikeouts have come down dramatically this season. But the thing that also concerns you, as all part of this too, is if he's going to worry about the strikeouts, is that going to be, a less of a power profile? And so he's a well-rounded player in a lot of respects, but it does seem like he's aging very rapidly. Mark Gorosh, who's a Twitter personality, said he's aging in dog years, which I kind of thought was pretty funny. But you can see he just doesn't have the same sprint speed he did earlier in his career. He can still make those diving plays, but I feel like when he does that, it's more of a necessity than an ability at this point. Like, he just barely gets to the ball. And it looks like he's hurting quite a bit when he's making those plays. So I'm very curious about Riley Green. I mean, a couple of years ago, you would say he's a guy that you expect to stay in Detroit for the next decade. Now, Jordan and I were kind of debating, well, is this a guy that you do hand an extension to early by the way he's looking? And then, it's kind of laughing at ourselves, too, because he is an emerging star in this league. He's an all-star last year, 30-plus home runs, plays decent defense, although the metrics, he's actually a negative defender. But, all in all, you want to say, hey, that's a guy that you want to sign long-term, and then yet everybody is just kind of concerned about the question mark. So perplexing is a great word for him. He's a great young man. All the interviews, he's very polite and polished. He's very nonchalant, which I think drives some people crazy too. But he's going to be a big part of this team. And if they want to go anywhere this season, Riley Green has to be the guy. I think he could be, a guy on a team that had a better offense, like a fifth or sixth option. But on the Tigers, he has to be the second or third best player on offense if they want to go, as far as they want.
There's kind of a good news, bad news as part of this, because you were talking about the one of the great stories of the season so far, which is obviously Kevin McGonigal. But I think that's kind of made people realize that there's maybe a little bit of a superstar vacuum on this team, and he's kind of emerged as already one of the leaders in a lot of different categories. But we can't talk enough about him. But you mentioned another name, and I wanted to have a discussion with you that you had on the podcast, but Jordan wasn't really able to have it with you because he's not as much of a football fan. We cover all the sports, and I have a show co-hosted with Shane Graham on Thursdays, so we talk a lot of football here. So I wanted to have the conversation with you, which is you were talking about Hard Knocks and how Malcolm Rodriguez showed up for the Lions and gave them a lot of juice and kind of raised the level and raised the energy of that linebacker room, which I thought was an interesting analogy. But I'm curious about the other. We've been following the young guys a lot on this show. We're friends with the guys at Tigers Minor League Report. We have a lot of the beat writers from and play-by-play guys from the minor leagues here on the show. And obviously they had McGonigal and Max Clark running up together. I want to make a buddy cop movie with those two. That's a different subject for another day that we can talk about. But I because it would be great. They're perfect. They're like Murtaugh and Riggs from Lethal Weapon. But I'm curious about Max Clark. Obviously, he's off to a good start, but I could see him being one of those guys that could be a bit like a Malcolm Rodriguez, where he comes in and he might scuffle a little bit. He's a young guy. He's got to learn, but man, he's energy in abundance. And I could see him giving that juice because sometimes that's what this team needs. It seems like they need a guy to kind of get them going. And I'm curious if you see him in that role since you were making that Rodriguez analogy. I know you're talking about McGonigal and him showing up, but it made me think of Clark.
Yeah, Max Clark is an electric factory. I mean, plain and simple. He's got the dramatic flair, but he's got the ability to back it up. I know it was a controversial pick in that draft year. You know, they really could have went with him or Wyatt Langford, who is a great player in Texas now. But, you know, they bet on the upside of the young high school kid at the time. And it's looking like it's going to be a really good investment. He and McGonigal were tied at the hip. Obviously, McGonigal was drafted later, but kind of usurped Clark as the star and the darling of the minor leagues. But Max Clark has been terrorizing Toledo. And when I say terrorizing, I absolutely mean the definition of he has been taking the International League down there by storm. He is just such a motivated young man. When he got sent down to minor league camp in the spring, he got the date of that day that he was sent down tattooed on his body, and he is just a man possessed down in Toledo. So he's looking to get up here. He's looking to make his mark immediately, and he took it personally, and you love to see it. So when he does come up here, and it will be later this year, you know, the way it's looking, he is absolutely going to provide a shot in the arm for this team. He provides so much in his ability. The only, you know, kind of downside, if you could poke some criticism at his game, he's not a big power guy, but he's got the speed, he's got the defense, he's got the base running ability, he's got the contact power, and he can hit it all over the park too. And a little bit of power to match, but that's not really much of his game. So I do absolutely think Detroit is going to fall in love with Max Clark, similar to how they did for Kevin McGonigal. But he's just such a different breed of player, and not something that Detroit has had in a long time. I've always said that the team, as it's kind of created right now, doesn't have a lot of flair for the dramatic. It's a lot of oh shucks guys. This kid is a superstar in terms of just the way he looks and dresses and sounds and does interviews. He's got the chains, he's got the sunglasses, but he's a really humble kid too. He's a big believer in his ability. He's not afraid to be flashy, but not in a conceited way. So he is an extremely exciting player, and he has been absolutely just taking that AAA assignment by storm. So we might see him sooner than later. I know they called up Wenzel for the Parker Meadows injury, but he is not going to be far behind. I'd probably say by June we might get our first look at him.
To go back to my Lethal Weapon analogy, they have a bunch of Murtaughs at the major league level, a bunch of guys that are getting too old for this. They need a young guy that can kind of get the juice. I know their average age is actually not that old, but it does feel like that's kind of the ho-hum attitude that the aw shucks attitude that you're referring to. So we need a Riggs in there. This is a very inside reference. So if you haven't seen Lethal Weapon, I'm sorry, but it's a famous franchise. It's been around for a while, but no, I do think he could serve a purpose. And unfortunately, with that Meadows injury being long term, obviously Perez got pulled up, but you could see that opening the door to Clark sooner rather than later.
Yeah, certainly. Wenzel Perez provides some positional flexibility. He can play center, he can play right, he can play left in the pinch. But they've got a number of guys that can play the position now between him, Matt Vierling, and Javier Baez. Now, the one scenario in which I think you would see him sooner than later is if there's another injury that pops up or if they're just not getting anything out of center field. Javier Baez, I actually like him in center more than short. I think he plays better offensively when his feet are off of the dirt. So they do have a little bit of a log jam at center. But there is, I'll say this, if they were to get swept by the Marlins in that series they just had and they dropped 7 straight, I think you might have seen him then because they were just going to look for anything to give him a spot. But that's not what they'd want to do. They are very committed to keeping him down at Toledo for the development. I mean, it's the best thing in the world if they really start to get things cooking here, and then he can continue to percolate in the minors. But yeah, I think if the ship was looking like it was going to go down early on this season, they might have called him up just to see what he could do. But either way, whenever we see him, it's going to be exciting.
Yeah, that's really interesting because when A.J. Hinch was asked about that, he put the kibosh on that very quickly. It was Wenzel Perez, and he was like, we have to develop him. So it was very interesting. Like, you could even see him in June. I know he's setting the league on fire, and these fans are, as much as they are in love with McGonigal, Max Clark is like 1A to these fans that want to see him come up. But A.J. Hinch he really stopped that really quickly. Like, nope, he needs to be down there and to develop.
Yeah, and he absolutely did say that, and I think that's truly what he believes. But who knows what would have happened if it were continued. Now, if like I said, if they dropped the 3 against the Marlins, would Scott Harris, go to him and say, hey, we really need a spark plug here. This kid's hot. Let's get the hot hand. I'm not qualified enough to say. I tend to believe AJ, and I do know he wants the more development time. But it would have been interesting to me if they would have made that move to try to catch just a little bit of lightning in a bottle, knowing how important this season is, likely as Tarek Skubal's last season on the club.
It'd be fun, for sure. The buzz at Comerica Park over the weekend. Can you imagine with Max Clark there as well? Wow.
It would have been unreal. Yeah, I'm excited to see him. I need to get down at Toledo while he's still there and get some cheap tickets because he's going to be up in Detroit when we blink.
Oh, yeah, and I do think he's that. I mean, I'm making analogies and joking around about it, but I do think his personality is kind of what they need. Obviously, the clubhouse needs a variety, and sometimes you need some equalizing there that happens in that clubhouse where you're in there so much of the time. That's why it is so kind of trend based in baseball, and it's very up and down. It's because you're sitting around a lot. It depends on the personalities in those clubhouse. So yeah, thankfully that's a lever that they can pull at some point in the season here, and we'll probably see him up sooner rather than later, like you said. So it'll be interesting to see when we do see him. But appreciate you joining the show, and I want to make sure to plug the podcast and any social media so people can follow you here in the meantime.
Yeah, thank you guys so much for the opportunity. Truly appreciate it. If anybody wants to check out our show, it's at Eat 'em Up Pod across all the podcast platforms. On social media, we're at Eat 'em Up Pod. I am at AUrban91. My co-host Jordan Hall is at Hosted by Jay Hall. We put episodes out pretty much every Wednesday during the season. In the off season, we're about a once-a-month show, but it's really lighthearted. Jordan and I are just fans, and we get a lot of our information and stats from the beat writers and Tiger Miley Report. We're friends with those guys too, but it's a lighthearted show. We like to have fun. We like to kind of just comment on the team, not get too much into the analytics and sabermetrics, and have a guest on from now and again. So again, appreciate the opportunity. You guys thinking of us.
Definitely. Always like having you on, and I enjoy the podcast. And we'll look forward to having you on as the lengthy 162 game season for now drags on. But no, we appreciate you coming on the show, and we'll look forward to talking to you soon.
Thanks, gentlemen. Have a great evening.
All right. Thanks. You too. Thanks to Alex Urban. Appreciate him coming on, talking some Tigers here. And
great stuff.
Yeah, definitely. And now Jeff and I have a segment in studio, so we'll see what we're going to talk about. Maybe more Lethal Weapon. Let's see if I can interest him in that. Probably not. He's shaking his head at me. It's a random reference.
Maybe if they reboot it, Ryan.
Man, that's not a good sign. I don't know who I lost with that analogy, but it's what came to mind. So we'll see what comes to mind in the last segment. Stick with us. You're listening to Sports Intel on Jethro FM. All request show. I gotta call in a request at some point.
Yeah, you
Jeff.
do.
I've never
Absolutely.
called in a request. I don't think you're gonna. I mean, you've heard my bumpers. I don't know that my music aligns super well. I do like a variety, but I can't imagine you playing Beast in Black or Battle Beast or anything with
That'd
Beast
be a
in the
stretch.
title. Yeah,
That would be a stretch.
yeah. What's the most random
Beast or Burden, I could do that.
There you go.
Some Stones.
Okay. What's the most random request you've ever received on the All Request show? They're like, I want Enya on the country.
You know what?
network.
When I was out at the expo, you came out to say hi at the expo.
Yes.
I
Yep.
actually had oh my gosh, now I can't think of it. It was one of the famous piano players.
Okay.
That I had a request on the slip. A guy said Beethoven.
Was it? Oh, it was one of the classical.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
And I was like, I don't think so. I didn't see it till I got back, and I was like, hope he's not listening because, I can't. But that was the most random. And then Saturday, I had a call for the Monkees.
Okay.
Not one of their bigger hits.
Okay.
You know, I could consider a couple. And I know we play a solo Monkees.
Okay.
From 73.
Okay.
We play that one, Joanne, which was on the country charts. But he wanted, I can't remember which one he wanted, but it wasn't one of their more popular
So it was
ones.
a deep cut from
it
the
was
Monkees?
a deep cut from the Monkees, and there just aren't that many deep cuts from the Monkees.
That's interesting to me because I like a variety, but my music interests can tend to be very random, as shown by the fact that we have two Scandinavian metal bands as the bumpers for the show. But that has always been a curiosity to me what requests you get, because I do like that we're country with a twist. We do have a variety. It's not like if it's slightly out of the format, it's not like that's crazy here. I don't think I told you this, but we did have a day where the producer wasn't here yet. I don't know if it was a day you were working, but the producer wasn't here yet, and we got a request. I think it was supposed to be for Rowdy's part, and I was like, well, you can call into the All Request show with Jeff Isaak, that you can look up his page. But he was asking me, and I was like, I am not your guy for this, buddy. This is not gonna. We are not gonna help each other here. But I'll have to I'll work on a request.
And I get a lot of great
that.
ones. It's a lot of fun. Always a surprise. I'm always surprised every Saturday night with at least one request. And I think it's fantastic.
That's a great thing about music. There's so many menu options for everybody. That's the thing about sports too that I like. I know people are not happy about the Red Wings and obviously the Tigers. We were talking about their slow start, but there's so many sports to watch, and it is a joy to be able to watch these sports. That's an opportunity to be able to watch sports.
Do I even dare tell you what I was watching Sunday morning after I got out of church?
I want to know now. Sunday morning, was it cricket?
No.
Okay.
What I found out is they were repeating it. It was the Women's College Bowling Championship.
Okay.
That's what I was watching.
Do you have any analysis for us from the bowling championship? Who was in it? I didn't even know they had it in college.
Yes.
IU didn't have a team. They weren't going to recruit me though for bowling. My dad always made fun of my bowling emotion.
It was Wichita State. It was the Shockers, the women's Shockers. I can't remember the other team.
Okay.
They do a best of 7. It was a best of 7.
And is it one versus one? Is it the best one, or is it a team?
Well, it's a tournament, and these were the final 2. Yes,
but on the team, is it one bowler or is it several bowlers?
It's like the starting lineup of baseball.
Okay,
like you have your leadoff bowler, and then you've got the ones. The 4th or 5th seem to be the best bowlers. They were consistent. All I know is they could all whoop me, even if I had the guards up on. They put the guards up for the kids.
I was going to ask if anybody had bumpers.
I could have the bumpers up, and they'd still beat me. It was fun.
Or could you do that thing where you put it on the little slant and then have it go down?
Yep, they'd still beat me. It's amazing how consistent those girls were. Young ladies. They looked so young, but they were. It kept me interested. I watched Well, I can't. It was at Jackson State. I think it was Jackson State. They won in 5 games, but it was a best of 7.
I did not know that bowling. I did not know that we had college bowling. I'll admit that, and I did not know that it was that prominent right now. Like that, I'm surprised that was on TV,
yeah,
and
ESPN
they
2.
have all these programs that's great for these young bowlers that wanted to do that. I didn't know we were still bowling.
I went and looked through the tournament. The only Big Ten team that made the tournament was Nebraska. Apparently, the women's Nebraska
That makes
bowling
sense to
team
me.
Are very, very good.
I mean, it is Nebraska.
It is Nebraska.
I don't know, what they don't have as many options out there probably, but it's good. Hey, they've had a good year. They had a good year in basketball and a good year in bowling, apparently. See, I never know what we're going to talk about. I know I was random with my Lethal Weapon reference that everybody loved in the last segment, but yeah, now we're talking about bowling, so that's great. You never know what you're going to get here. This is Jethro FM, so you got country with a twist. I think I would firmly be classified as the twist, as one of the twist elements, but we've got
intel and twist.
Yes, yeah, we got a lot of twisting on this show, but I want to thank our guests and sponsors here. Michael Devellano, he was great on the hockey segment. All things considered, the season's about to end, but we're going to have Griffin's coverage here. Mom's taking apart the phone over there. I don't know what's going on with her, but then we got Eric Vincent covering the Pistons, and we're going to have some Pistons coverage, hopefully several weeks to do that here. Alex Urban of the Eat 'em Up podcast covering the Tigers. We'll have a long season covering them, which will be great. And then want to thank our sponsors, Collectible Insurance Services, Eric Hall Aesthetic and General Dentistry, Calder Financial, Grand Management Group, Rydan Investments, Encore Business Group, Jim Hegland of JH Realty, Williams Chiropractic, I-Corps, and the West Michigan Sports Commission. We want to thank all of them for their support. Thanks to Jeff for keeping me on track here. We're trying. I mean, it's kind of tough. I end up talking about cobbler and the cobbler and a cobbler in your family and Lethal Weapon. I mean,
we do have time, right?
Yeah, go ahead.
So I remember last year on the news, the last cobbler in Grand Rapids, the last business, did finally close. I think it was just last year. Now, if you go on Facebook Market, you will find a cobbler.
Sports Intel, your go-to source for cobbler information here.
Right. You need a shoe cobbler. Facebook Market, everybody.
If there's cobblers out there that want to sponsor the show, feel free to call us.
Oh, can you imagine having a cobbler on the guest line?
That would be amazing.
I think we'd lose all listenership.
I want to have one.
I would even listen to the podcast it was on.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, exactly. I'm up for it. Yeah, we haven't. See, you do the requests on your show. We have not really taken any callers on this show. That's something that we haven't done yet. I would take one from a cobbler, though.
That'd be fantastic.
Yeah, just that.
We might have to do an extra hour. Get that approved from Scott.
Yeah,
Scott, we need to talk to a cobbler.
We need to talk to a cobbler.
Hour?
It'd be like, oh, both you guys are fired. But thankfully we're headed into baseball season, so he's excited about that. But want to make sure to advertise the rest of the lineup. You got the Sports Project 7 to 9 Wednesday and 10 to 12 Saturday. Then you got the Polka Pops, bunch of that polka overtime on Saturday, and then after that we've got the All Request Show.
All Request Saturday night.
Be sure to tune into that and the rest of the lineup. We appreciate you joining us. We'll try to get a cobbler.
I'm on a mission now.
But in the meantime, enjoy your week and stay informed and stay vigilant. Have a great week.
Sports Intel with Ryan Walsh is brought to you by
Collectible Insurance Services, Eric Hall Aesthetic and General Dentistry, Calder Financial, Grand Management Group, Rydan Investments, Encore Business Group, Jim Hegland of JH Realty, Williams Chiropractic, I-Corps, the West Michigan Sports Commission.
Sports Intel with Ryan Walsh.
Stay informed and stay vigilant.